There was a segment of these chats that were about the bombing campaign itself that happened not before the bombing campaign, but as the first strikes happened. At 1:48 p.m., Mike Waltz sent the following text containing real-time intelligence about conditions at an attack site, apparently in Sana'a. He said VP building collapse, had multiple positive ID, and it was unclear what he was referring to. He said, the Atlantic article says Mike Waltz was referring here to Hegseth, General Michael Kurilla, the commander of Central Command in the intelligence community, or IC. But J.D. Vance didn't understand the message from Waltz. It was just written in a very incoherent way. So J.D. Vance said, what? And then Mike Waltz responded this way: typing too fast, basically, sorry, typing too fast. The first target, their top missile guy, we had positive ID of him walking into his girlfriend's building. And now it's collapsed. And then after that, J.D. Vance responded a minute later, excellent. And then 35 minutes after that, Ratcliffe, the CIA director, wrote, a good start. And then Waltz followed with a series of emojis, an American flag emoji, a fist emoji, and a fire emoji. So I just want to highlight that this is what the Yemen bombing campaign entailed to start off. They identified someone that they claim was a top missile person for the Houthis. They didn't kill him in his car. They didn't kill him on a battlefield. They waited for him to enter a residential building filled with civilians, including his girlfriend. And the way they killed him was by collapsing the entire building. And that first day, there were many claims of civilian deaths. And unsurprisingly, given that these were the rules of engagement. Is that something that you think is a legitimate military strategy? To find somebody that is, in your view, a legitimate target and just blowing up whatever building they're in, regardless of how many civilians you kill? If during the Iraq War, the Iraqis had identified where a military commander lived, and he lived in some 47-floor high-rise apartment in Chicago, would the Iraqis have had the right to just blow up the entire building and said, well, there was one guy in there who was a legitimate target? Or what if the Yemenis or the Palestinians blew up a building now in which there was located some kind of military commander, and they blew up a building in Washington, or they blew up an apartment building in New York, and their excuse was, well, there was one guy in there who was a military commander, and we would instantly call that terrorism. We would say, oh, that's an act of terrorism. You blew up an apartment building and you killed 37 American civilians along with one member of the military. But of course, when we do it, it's not terrorism. Somehow it becomes legitimate. But if that's what this bombing campaign is, collapsing residential buildings in order to take out some mid-level missile person, or their top missile person even, who will just get replaced very easily, as happened throughout the entire War on Terror. We were told so many times, hey, we got the number 3 person of Al-Qaeda. And everyone cheered, and then like a year later, they're like, hey, we got the number 3 person of Al-Qaeda again, because they just kept getting replenished. And that's how the War on Terror went on and on. This is the kind of endless war posture that Trump said he wanted to avoid. Remember, Trump criticized Joe Biden for bombing Yemen last year. Biden's argument was they're bombing Israel and they're attacking our ships. And Trump said bombing Yemen is totally unnecessary. You should pick up the phone and use diplomacy to resolve it. And now not only is Trump doing exactly what Joe Biden did, bombing Yemen, and what Barack Obama did as well, when he worked with the Saudis for a full-on war with Houthis, just endless war in the Middle East, but he's loosened the rules of engagement, apparently, so that the military is free to blow up entire residential apartment buildings as long as one person that they want to kill is in there, not caring in the slightest about how many civilians or children or whoever happens to be, unfortunately, have the misfortune of being in that apartment building when it's quote-unquote collapsed, how many people are killed with it. So there's a lot going on in this story, most of it quite ugly and unnecessary and eroding of credibility for absolutely no reason. But the most significant part by far is the fact that we now have another war in the Middle East that is going to be ongoing, that's not going to stop. And just to remind you, the Houthis were actually attacking U.S. ships when Biden was bombing them and when Trump said that bombing campaign was unnecessary. Once there was a ceasefire in Gaza that Trump and his envoy were able to facilitate, the Houthis stopped attacking ships and they said, now that there's a ceasefire, we don't need to attack ships anymore. And they only restarted attacking ships once, in their view, and everyone in the international community agrees that this happened, once the Israelis started blocking the humanitarian aid that the ceasefire called for, food, medicine, water, into Gaza. And they said, because Israel isn't abiding by the ceasefire agreement, we're only going to attack Israel-flagged or Israel-owned ships. So they're not even attacking American ships anymore, just Israel's. And that is what prompted Trump, after saying last year that he opposed it, to restart Biden's war and to escalate it, and clearly killing a ton of civilians as usual. And then at some point we'll be attacked and everybody will walk around saying, oh my God, what did we do? Why did they hate us? And I think that has to be the focus once this question of how Jeffrey Goldberg got added to the chat is resolved and we can move on from that. This is what our focus ought to be. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.